Our theme music, though.
Yeah. Welcome. Welcome to a special session, a special conversation with just our thoughts. This is where we discuss trending topics, some national news, some current events, some sports, and many other topics that can be meaningful. We tend to have some fun in the beginning of our show, talking about top five whatevers, our greatest singers, and we try to have some laughs, prior to opening up to the show. But today is different. I'm your host, Keith Hall, and again, I cannot do this without my brothers. And today on our show, we got Kevy Kev. Say what's up, Kev.
Yo, yo, what's going on, good people? I love my people.
We also got Ward with
Hey,
us. Ward, what's going on, Ward?
what's up, man? What's going
Ward
on?
A.
And we also got EB, the specialist. What's going on, EB?
Oh, stop it. What's up, everybody? What's going
Hey,
on?
Marvel.
It's definitely good to have my brothers at arms with us. Today, we are specifically talking about the shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the fallouts afterwards, where three children sat in the back of his dad's vehicle and watched their father get gunned down, shot in the back 7 times by the very same people with whom they were taught to that would protect them. Reports about Jacob are that he's still paralyzed, and today his parents said that he was handcuffed to the hospital bed. Some question of why Jacob didn't stop while the police had their guns drawn. Could it be possible that Jacob was scared? Could it be possible that Jacob was worried about the welfare of his children or the potential of being handcuffed with a knee placed on the back of his neck again? We didn't really know what was going on in Jacob's mind at the very moment. And some have questioned him even opening the car door. But what we do know is Jacob should not have been shot in the back 7 times. Several days of demonstrations has happened. There was a 8 p.m. curfew in Wisconsin, in Kenosha, due to the state emergency. Some demonstrators separated and they congregated elsewhere. And at this time, there was a vigilante, a 17-year-old opportunist who came possibly 20 miles away to strategically wait in with an assault rifle to gun down these angry, frustrated demonstrators. The 17-year-old was from Rittenhouse, Illinois, whom which they captured over the last several days. He's since been charged with first-degree intentional homicide. On his social media page, it says that he was a Trump supporter. He was part of a police youth cadet program, and that he also had a proclivity for guns. Today we got a guest. Actually, our first guest on our show, the fellas, is a Camden native. Grew up in the city of Camden, matriculated through the Camden City schools, and who I've known for many, many, many years, maybe over 40 years. He's going to join us shortly just to give us his perspective, answer some questions about being a police officer, being raised in Camden, married to a Black woman, and raising his kids. Fellas, I appreciate y'all urgency, man. When we talked about it the other day, there's been so much fallout from the NBA, from the sports world, conversations going on. I'm typically a upbeat, assuring, glass, half full, hopeful type of dude. But to be honest, man, change for me in this area, I do got a little. I do have my faith is small, man. I don't have much faith in this area, man, because we continue to go back to the same thing in this area. So, I wanted to ask you guys, man, before we brought Chris on, what's the movie that has been playing in y'all mind since this happened? What are some of the conversations that you've had, with people, because we're back here again, man.
Well, for
Yo,
me,
go ahead.
I really don't. There's really not much conversation that go on because, I work around mainly white people, and
Mhm.
of course they don't bring nothing up. and sometimes I'll try and bring it up, and of course I get that that deer in the headlight look at times.
Right.
And, it seems like they don't really want to talk about it, and so I kind of like I'll say my piece and just keep it moving, because it seems like they if it doesn't affect them, they really don't care. In a way, what I mean, they may say it at the time, and
Go ahead.
so it's
Keep
like
going.
it's crazy, man. I it's like I want to talk about it. I want to get it off my chest, but it's really nobody for me to really speak to, because most of the day I work by myself. I'm always moving around since the job basically the title that I have on the job, that I have to move around.
Okay.
But it's like I don't get in those conversations with too many with people, because it's just not there. But there is one guy on the job that is a former Camden cop, and we had a little conversation. But it's like talking to him is like just talking into the mirror, because we kind of have the same idea about it, and it's like it's real. I don't get any objections or any type of in-depth convo about it.
Okay.
So it's like, to me, I get in a way I get tired of hearing it, because it's the same broken record, man. It's like we want change. It's not like we asking for all this, a whole plethora of change of ideals that we want. It's like it's all we want is just one simple thing, and they're looking so far as to like, you
Which is
guys are
equality.
angry and this and that. I'm like, no, we just want to be treated like you treat yourself. You treat, what I mean? Like, come on.
All right. EB.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, for me, man, it continues to be very disheartening, man. I had an opportunity to watch Jacob Blake's father be interviewed today, and to hear him talk about how his son was handcuffed, or should I say shackled, to a hospital bed by his ankles. Now, you got to keep in mind that this gentleman is paralyzed from the waist down. So where is he going to go? And to hear his father say that his son asked two things the last time he saw him. Well, the first thing that he said to him was, "Dad, I love you." And then he said, "Dad, why did they shoot me so many times?" So his dad went on to say that, "Son, they wasn't supposed to shoot you at all." So that tells you that they were actually trying to kill him. So,
Right.
for me, it's difficult to just fathom this, man, because I have two little boys that I'm trying to, grow up to be righteous young men. And
Right.
I know one day I'm going to have that conversation with them about how to react, in front of police
Right.
officers. So,
Right.
that's where I am with it.
Yeah.
I think I think when we think about when I watched him walk around the front of the car and go into the car, and then to be shot in the back 7 times, I wonder what was the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 was about. I know I've heard, and I'm not sure. Unfortunately, we do got Chris on, and he can enlighten us on in certain areas when in terms of training. But what was the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 about?
Right.
And was there any other way to stop this? So I struggle with that for sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead, you got it, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you were saying, like y'all was saying, like the amount of times that he was shot in the back in a very vulnerable position is mind-boggling. We wonder, is that even lawful to use lethal force on an individual who is in a position of fleeing.
Right.
You know, that's one thing that's kind of unclear as it pertains to different states. You know, you shooting an individual in the back, and it's been done to us before. We've been shot in the back before in a fleeing position, but officers can justify still when we flee that they was fearful for their life. So the one thing I'm waiting on is for the Kenosha Police Department to be transparent. There's no police body cams because that wasn't on the budget until next year. So all you have is really grainy video recording of, you know, from two angles of what would happen, and the officer's statement and statements from those that are around. And you know, when it comes to us, many times they don't view us as a credible witness, even in our, even in an assault on our, you know, towards us. They don't see us as a credible witness when we're being assaulted, you know, by law enforcement or whoever, you know. So yeah, that boggles my mind, the amount of times that he was shot. I'm surprised that he's still alive, and to know that, you know, he's not going to walk again, and his intestines and his liver and his kidneys. I mean, all those moments that, you know, he could have had with his 3-year-old, his 5-year-old, and 8-year-old have been stolen from him. In the
also
ages where I'm gonna get there, but in the ages in which you can really interact with your children and have that play with your boys, you know, and then on top of that, for these 3 children to be in the back of the car seat to witness this is, shows that the officers did not care about if these bullets could have ricocheted and killed one of the children in the car. But the trauma that they're going to live with for the rest of their lives, they don't get the mental health.
No different than they get us in the slavery days.
You know, but we talking
Jim Crow
2020.
days.
But
it don't matter. We're still living in the system.
But listen to what I'm saying. Like right now, like these 3 boys, you know, are going to have to deal with this type of trauma, this mistrust. It's going to happen all over again. This cycle, this generational cycle of mistrust and mistreatment by law enforcement to the Black community. You know, so, you know, and then I'm gonna let you go. But then how they villainize the victim.
Right.
Now they want to pull out everything about his past and that recent call to justify these 7 shots.
And he wasn't.
So it's just like they didn't do that to the 17-year-old. It's like, you know, now he did something. Do they pull out his criminal record and bring that to light?
Yeah.
They did. But I was seeing a post, it was earlier today, where the guy was like, yeah, well, let's bring that to light. And he read his criminal record. So it's like, this kid has been nothing but trouble, because all right, he's 17 now. He has a criminal record dating back to 2016. As being he was arrested for operating a firearm while intoxicated. So you're 13 years old, and you're intoxicated with a firearm.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And then it's I blame, you know, and the parents, and I blame a lot on the parents too, because you got to think about it. The mother drove him.
His mom is the one that dropped him off. Absolutely.
Yeah, she drove him from Illinois to Wisconsin with the AR-15 in hand to go do this. Like, come on, man. But I wanted to get back. It's like, for me,
implicit as he is.
Yeah, but for me, it's like, I don't see the first shot. Why was even one shot necessary? You had 3 officers on the scene.
Right.
Absolutely.
You had, you know what I mean? I mean, in my eyes, it's like you're trained to cover each other while you're on the scene. So to me, it's like you got one guy with his gun drawn. What were the other two doing? They got their guns drawn too. Why do you need that? And if the guy's just walking, couldn't you kind of like head him off? He wasn't running.
Yeah, he wasn't. And in addition to the initial call, wasn't for him.
No, it was for a fight.
If I'm mistaken, it was for another fight. Yeah, and he didn't have anything to do with it. Right, absolutely.
And he was breaking it up. And it was like, as soon as they showed up, he's like, all right, I'm out. Police is here to handle it.
Here's what they're saying, Keith. They're trying to say that he had a restraining order against him. Yeah. This is what this is the picture they're trying to paint. And there was a restraining order against him going to the home of the child's mother, his former, and he went there possibly, or his current girlfriend was there, and a fight ensued between the two women. They're trying to paint a picture that he has a history of domestic violence with the mother whose premises that he was on. So this is the and I don't know how much of that is true, but they're trying to say that the common denominator in the call happening, the fight happening, him being the common denominator and the cause of the police presence being needed, right? So Woody had brought up how they don't really tell you the criminal background of the 17-year-old. Right. You'll start to see, how Jacob Blake is going to be painted as a criminal. Yep. But you're going to see the 17-year-old painted as this troubled kid that has had some mental health issues that have been unaddressed.
Because they already started.
They're going to start to fix the framework, the narrative, to look as if Jacob deserved, to make it look more so like their actions of using lethal force was justified in this incident. That 17-year-old, he was the law enforcement that was there. They gave him bottled water.
Yep.
Before they arrested him, they didn't arrest him until he got back to Illinois.
Yeah.
Okay. He walked by them with his AR-15. People are saying that he was shooting into the crowd of protesters, and over the loudspeaker, the officers were heard was "Thank you all for your service." So when you talk about that white supremacy, and when you talk about the police as slave patrols back in the day, and then as vigilante groups, which are predominantly white, being supported by law enforcement, this goes into us really having so much distrust in the police to be there to help us.
Yeah, let's bring Chris on. And first I want to thank Chris for being brave enough to join this platform and talk about this sensitive topic, the killing of Black Americans at the hands of police. Chris is a 24-year police officer, and spent 17 years in Camden, married, again, matriculated through the Camden schools system, even went to Cheney, and married to a beautiful Black woman. And I've known Chris for a very, 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 very long time. But I want to bring him on to give his perspective as a police officer, and also let the audience know that we're here to share our thoughts and express our feelings policing in America. Chris is not all police. He's sharing his experience and his perspective as a former Camden police officer and still current a police officer. So we're going to please continue to be respectful of all views and expressed on our show today. So let's bring Chris on, man. Hey, what's going on, to Chris? Chris, what's going on, man? What's going on, man? Hey, Chris, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. Yeah, man. So we thank you, man, again for being brave and just want to talk about policing in America, man. So we're going to sit here and hopefully we could just hover over this conversation, sit down and talk about some of the training, that you guys, that officers have. I think about, when I think about training, I think about nurses. They often have to get recertified. I think about, EB for one. I know he often talks about, getting his credits every year, as an administrator, as an educator. I'm sorry. So I think about, what'd you say?
It's a specialist.
Yeah, so I think about, as a specialist. So so if you want to, man, let's have a conversation, man, about training, about your experience, about coming up in Camden, policing, in Camden, and through the officer's eyes, give us that perspective if you can.
Well, as far as training goes, I mean, police education is a never-ending thing. Also, we have to recertify on multiple topics twice a year. Firearms qualifications twice a year, use of force twice a year, vehicle pursuits twice a year, domestic violence twice a year. We go through nonstop training. So, well, that's here in the state of New Jersey. I can't comment on policing in other states. I don't know what they go through, but here in New Jersey, we are regularly trained. There's a lot of in-service training that goes on, and we can also sign up for any additional training that we want to go to further our careers. So just when we come out of the police academy, your training doesn't stop. So that's number one. Number two is your real just street learning, what you learn from doing the job. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I've done it for 17 years as an inner city officer, and my last 7 has been doing it as a state officer. Totally different job, but I still put the uniform on every day and go to work. You know what I mean? And and that's where we're at right now. Some of the things that have happened in America, it's some sad situations, but I don't want anybody to believe that police are systematically going out to kill black people, because it's just not the case. If you allow me to talk about some statistics, I'll throw some statistics out there, to show that police are not going to work with the idea to kill a black person every day. It's just not happening. You know what I mean? So, wherever you want me to go with the conversation, we can go. If you want to talk about the Jacob Blake incident real quick, I can run through that video and tell you what I saw as an officer.
Officer.
Okay, Talk to us about
the general feel on that video that you saw.
So, all right. So I saw the Jacob Blake video, and initially I thought it was dead wrong. 100% wrong. I thought it was a completely unjustified shoot initially. And let me say this because I feel that Americans right now, and maybe even more so black Americans, are too quick to jump and judge before all the evidence comes out. Because now that they've slowed the video down and they've showed it frame by frame, you can see that Mr. Blake actually does have a knife in his hand when he's walking around the car. It's almost like a sickled knife. It's curved. Number two is videos can be your friend and videos can be your enemies. And what I mean by that is that we don't see what's happening on the other side of that car before Mr. Blake comes around the front, followed by the 3 police officers who already have their guns out. That was a concern for me at first, because why do they have their guns out if they're just following a guy? Something must have happened on the other side of the car is the only thing that I can assume, is where they saw him with some kind of weapon and now they're trying to take him down. Okay. We don't see what's on the other side of the car unless you guys got access to another video that I don't. I didn't see it. I just see Mr. Blake walk around. I see 3 cops behind him with their guns already drawn. That tells me as a police officer, something already went down. All right. That's what I see. But even with that being said, he never seemed to be a threat to the police officers. Even if he had a knife, he was walking away. The problem what I see policing right now is I think police are getting soft. I think they're scared to go hands-on with somebody. I think they're too quick to go to their mechanical forces, being their taser or their OC spray or their handgun. In Camden, when I was a cop at Camden, he would have never made it around to the front of the car to even dig into the car. He would have been gripped up, slammed down, cuffed, and taken away. So yeah, I think police are getting soft in America. I don't know if they're scared of the repercussions that are going to come with it. But to me, as bad as it would look scooping him up and body slamming him on the ground, it's going to look better in the end than shooting him 7 times in the back. Right. And that's what I get. Now, I'm hearing other unsubstantiated sources saying that he was rambling on about having a gun in the car. I don't know if that's true or not, or if that's just the media trying to make things up or whatever.
A lot
but
of things we don't know about
we
it.
we don't know a whole lot, and that's why
Right.
I say before you rush to judgment on anybody, I mean, just
Right.
wait for some of the evidence to come out, because like I said, when they slow the video down frame for frame, you can see that he clearly had some kind of knife in his hand. So what I mean, but at the same time, from what I've seen, he never directly threatened the officers, and it could have been handled a different way. But I will say this: my understanding is they also tried to use a taser on him, and it was ineffective. Now, if they put 50,000 volts into any person, that person should go down. And if they don't, it tells me as a trained officer that he's on some kind of narcotics. That's what I would take from that. Some heavy narcotics, PCP, methamphetamine, something in that area that's going to not allow you to feel pain. And
right. Or maybe it's just that physically they cannot bring him down, just physically.
Yeah, but
whatever officers' tactics are to subdue a suspect, maybe they just really, he was this officer that pulled his gun out, he was on the force for 7 years. Don't know too much about his specific training, but for two officers to take him down, one could say that there could have been an illegal drug or substance in the system, but not all the time. Maybe these officers were just not as skilled in really how to physically subdue a suspect.
Yeah, Kev, I'm just saying, as far as the taser went, I mean, if you tase somebody, a normal individual is going to go down with 50,000 volts running through their body. You know what I mean? Unless there was a malfunction with the taser.
A malfunction,
the only other thing that can say that why somebody wouldn't be affected is they had to be on some kind of major narcotic.
Right. But like you said, there's been incidents of the taser malfunctioning on officers in the field as well. The one question I had, if I could jump in, Keith, can I just jump in with a question?
Go ahead. You got it, bro. You got it.
So how much of, you said these officers are soft these days, but I know one of the things that Camden has tried to implement is more training on racial bias and also de-escalation. How important are those two trainings necessary when you're dealing with communities of color?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say that I haven't been part of the Camden Force for over 7 years, so I haven't been part of that new training that they're doing. But listen, you always got to learn how to talk to people. That's number one. I mean, you got to be able to talk to people. You got to be able to respect people. Even if I'm going to lock you up right now, you got my respect until you don't have my respect no more. You know what I mean? You got to be respectful across the board. De-escalation, sometimes it just doesn't work. I mean, there's sometimes you just cannot talk to a person to get them to calm down from where they are. You know what I mean? It just doesn't work all the time. But with that being said, I worked in the inner city for 17 years. I never had to shoot anybody. Mm-hmm. I don't know very many officers that ever had to shoot anybody working in Camden. We always had a force of 400 people, and over 17 years with the retirements and influx of new officers, I probably worked with 1,000 officers. And in 17 years, we probably had 6 officers shoot somebody.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Now, do you accredit that with really knowing your community, being familiar with the community that you serve?
I mean, that helps. That helps. I mean, I did. I was born and raised in Camden, as Keith, introduced. I went through the Camden City school system, graduated from Camden High, class of 90.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So there's a value that you have invested in the city.
There is, definitely. But at the same time, at least half of the officers I worked with had no investment in the city. They didn't come from the city. You know what I mean? They came to Camden to get a job. You know what I mean? So you weigh it out. But at the same time, like I said, that's over my course of my 17 years working in Camden with 1,000 different officers. Nobody was out systematically trying to kill anybody, white, black, Spanish, male, female, old or young. You know what I mean? That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, Chris, I think nationally, I can definitely, I would disagree with you with the police officers systematically trying to kill our black men and women. I think it's just so much tape out there, so much film. And like you said, we don't see all the tape, but historically it's been happening. The background of what the police has been founded on, I think says a lot, and it still continues. And I can't speak specifically for Camden, but because you just gave me the numbers for Camden, but I think it's just too many killings, man, of our Black men, our Black women at the hands of white police officers, and when the facts come out, they don't appear to be they don't seem justified, and I can't really say you can't justify that killing, a lot of those killings that happened. So and I just think historically, man, with this going back and with the blood of this country, that's engraved in this country. I think that stands out for me. EB, you got something? You look like you got something, E.
Yeah, real quick, Chris. I want to take it from a political standpoint from up above. Do you know if there is any type of legislation or any policy or reform that's coming down from the top that they're trying to maybe implement eventually? I hear them talk about police reform and all that other good stuff. Have you heard anything as a veteran of something coming down the pike to somehow better, our communities as a whole?
Actually, I haven't, Eric. At this point, I haven't heard of anything coming down that's going to significantly change policing in this country.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there is to your question, E. There is an answer to that. There is on the floor right now with the Senate. There's the George Floyd Policing Act, which Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, and Senator Bernie Sanders, they have introduced. And it really focuses on excessive force, racial bias, misconduct, and it's the whole law enforcement officers accountable and able to be punished for any of these three areas being violated: excessive force, racial bias, or misconduct on the job. So it's called the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, and they're also looking at what the Supreme Court put in place in the 60s, which is qualified immunity. They're looking to try and revoke that, because that qualified immunity pretty much gives officers a lot of leeway into not being held
accountable,
held liable.
It's civil accountability. That only covers civil accountability.
Right. It covers civil accountability. But then states, the other thing is that the unions and the Fraternal Order of Police, they have contracts with states on really they have a lot of protections in the contracts. When they negotiate with cities and with states, they have a lot of protections for officers not to have a lot of discipline on their records, and not to have a lot of discipline or criminal charges to come to them. So it's an issue not only trying to be presented on the federal level with this legislation that Kamala Harris introduced, but also states have to look at how they're negotiating with the Fraternal Order of Police, because there might be too many protections in there that, officers that are those few bad apples, because Officer Kelly, you got to say that there are a few bad apples that spoils the reputation of a department as a whole.
There's no doubt there's bad cops out there, but there's bad everything. There's bad mechanics, there's bad lawyers, there's bad doctors. You know what I mean?
How many people killing people? But
how many people die on an operating table every day because a doctor made a mistake? It happens every day.
And the doctor can be held liable.
Yeah,
officers have qualified immunity.
Only for civil. We can be charged criminally. We can.
Right. You can.
We can.
There's a small percentage of officers that do go to jail.
Yeah. Because you got to remember, they have to be prosecuted. But if the prosecutor, is being, if the FOP is holding something over that prosecutor's head, they ain't gonna do nothing.
So you got to understand that there's a thin line between justified and not justified. You know what I mean? Like, you got to realize that a police officer's decision is not a Monday morning quarterback situation. When a police officer makes a decision and an action, it's as quick as blinking your eye, sometimes quicker. You know what I mean? There's been times
understand
I've
that.
had my gun out on people and I've come within a half trigger pull of pulling the trigger myself. You know what I mean? You can't until you've worn the uniform and you've had that gun out on somebody and your adrenaline is flowing and you don't know what they're trying to do to you. It's hard to comprehend. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback after you see a video and say, man, this is bad. You know what I mean?
But I do have a quick question.
When you're out there in that action doing it, it's a whole different situation.
All right. I got one quick
Go ahead,
question.
Ward, what you got?
There's all right, with your training, you have your lethal force and your non-lethal force and this and that. Like, do they emphasize one or the other? Try and take them down first, or
there's a force continuum. It starts with physical contact, which is the least amount of physical thing. That's something simple like escorting somebody to a car, you know what I mean? Putting handcuffs on somebody. Basic everyday police work is physical contact. From there, it goes up to physical force, which is, taking somebody down with your hands, fighting with somebody with your hands or your feet. It goes up from there to mechanical force, which is your OC spray, your baton, your taser, your K9. From there, it goes up to deadly force, which would be your handgun. You always want to start low, but you don't.
All right.
You can go right to deadly force in any situation. There's no scale saying you can go up or down either way.
Right. I think I need to rephrase my question. As far as your training goes, do they in actual training, do they emphasize, the physical force? Do you actually do more training on how to take the guy down more so than sit in front of a paper target, trying to shoot at a center mass for a kill?
Sure, we have defensive tactics training. That's also a yearly thing. We train in takedowns and arm locks, wrist locks, you know what I mean, and everything like that. So yeah, cops should be getting that training. They should be. You know what I mean?
Chris, you mentioned I remember one time you told me, hey Keith, man, I want to get home to my family. And I'll never forget that. You mentioned you out there, sometimes things are dangerous. And your thing was you wanted to get home to your family. You also just mentioned the adrenaline of what's going on in the moment. Is there any consideration of the other individual? I don't want to call him a suspect because Jacob Blake wasn't a suspect, of his adrenaline, in terms of the possibility, the potential of what could happen with these cops on me for no reason, and sometimes I wonder, is that ever considered? Because there's adrenaline flowing on both sides.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have to talk to each individual cop and see how they feel about that. I mean,
right.
Do I think about the consequences of if I pull the trigger, what's going to happen to the other person? Sure. You know what I mean? But is that a concern of mine? Honestly, no, it's not. You know what I mean? If that person's doing something that they need to be shot, they're going to be shot. You know what I mean? If that person's doing something that they need to be hit with a baton, they're going to get hit with a baton. And if that person just concedes his lockup and puts his hands behind his back, then he'll just be handcuffed. You know what I mean? But, my thought process is not worried about the other person when I'm out there. It's worried about me. It is. And that's honest.
I got it. Officer Kelly, again, I want to thank you. You're coming to have some tough talk with us. I appreciate that. So when the Camden County Force rolled out in about, I think, 2011, 2012.
2013, that's when they took over. May 2013, right. That's when I left.
So they were going through some financial issues. The state and the city was really almost in a hole financially. 400 officers, I think, were laid off at that time. And the county without the public's input, they went to formalize this Camden County Metro. Other cities really were supposed to be part of this, like Woodland and some other surrounding was supposed to be part of this Camden County Metro force. But some of so they've been an example as of late when the George Floyd incident happened in Minnesota about policing. I don't know if you've seen, Camden highlighted in the news nationally. So one of the things, to Wardy's point, one of the things in their training is that they emphasize that the use of deadly force is last resort. So they're to take every other measure. And not to say that Camden, for us who live here, there are issues. There are still some issues, some systemic issues, and some issues as far as community relations and how they handle and are familiar with the community that they serve. But there are some good things that have occurred, which is like the use of force as the last resort, which a lot of departments find as restrictive. But it's something that they've been emphasizing here in Camden, which to some degree kind of seems to work to some degree. How do you feel about that? About your training? I know you've been out for a while. Your training saying that the use of deadly force is your last resort. Grabbing that handgun in order to apprehend or in order to resolve the situation is your last resort, because we haven't, that's something that's not really prevalent today. We see officers, majority for our community, grabbing the weapon while they are trying to detain the suspect.
Well, if you go back to the video,
that training or anything?
But if you go back to the video and what I originally said, I told you I feel like policing in America is getting soft. I feel that cops are too quick to jump to their weapons and not go hands on with somebody. Like, I really believe that Mr. Blake could have been taken down just by somebody grabbing him from the back, controlling his arms, and taking him down to the ground. I don't believe that he had to die. I don't. Your handgun should always be your last.
He didn't die. Luckily,
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
he didn't die.
did.
He didn't need to be shot. He didn't need to be shot.
Right.
But yeah, your handgun should always be your last resort. It should never be the first thought that crosses your mind is, let me take my gun out. Unless you're going to a call that justifies that. You're going to a report of a man with a gun, an armed robbery in progress. Then you're thinking your gun. But if you're going to a domestic disturbance, which my understanding of that that's what that call was. It was a domestic disturbance.
Right.
Your handgun should not be your first thought. It just shouldn't. And so I agree.
That goes back to what you keep saying about them being soft.
Right.
Just a follow-up question, officer. Do you feel like there are too many calls to 911, to the police, for things that is really out of an officer's realm, i.e. mental health issues or some other social work issues or mental health issues or substance abuse issues that really should not be handled by law enforcement?
Well, okay, listen, I see where you're going with this, because they've been talking about sending social workers out in the field to handle certain 911 calls, and I'm never going to agree with that, ever. A social worker cannot do the job that I do. I'm sorry. Listen, things go from 0 to 100 real quick. Like who was that? Drake? That's what Drake says, right? 0 to 100 real quick.
No, we don't listen to him.
But listen, but it's true.
You.
Like, you could go to a 911 call about a guy, saying, I'm having some suicidal thoughts, and then a social worker goes and knocks on the door, and he's willing to take somebody else out with him. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to open that can of worms. I'm totally against that.
But the issue is not to send out that medical professional, that mental health professional alone, because yes, there may be a need for an armed officer to buddy up with the professionals.
Right.
The mental health response team to have an officer on hand in case things do go left. Because the person that is more equipped to deal with providing some crisis intervention services needs to be the one that is engaging the client, but that an officer could be there if things begin to deteriorate and become violent.
My question is, how readily available would a mental health professional be to go out to a field for a 911 call that could be coming in 15, 20 times a day? Because
they have 24-hour response teams just
Right, but
not
I'm saying-
locally, but there are models
but
that
some of
shows
these
that
calls-
that has been successful.
A suicide attempt is an immediate response. You can't respond to that tomorrow. You know what I mean? If somebody
But
wants
there
to
are-
kill themselves, they
Right.
want to kill
So
themselves.
what?
You know
So
I mean?
what
Right.
what type of training do you guys get to handle something like that?
Very little, honestly. In a municipal environment, very little. The job I work with now, a ton.
Right.
Keith knows what I do. You know what I mean? I'm working with psych patients all the time. You know what I mean? Mental health patients all the time. You know what I mean? But
Because you know what I really want to get to is like you mentioned that you feel as though policing is soft, and I kind
believe
of know what
some
you're saying,
officers-
and I kind
some
of know what
officers
you're
take it
saying
there.
because me being a former wrestler, you know, basically it went through, you know, the same thing sticks into my mind from Coach Dane. It's like a bad practice partner is no good. You know, just like if you're in an academy, if the guy is letting you turn his wrist and take him down, that
It's not
doesn't help
helping
that
you.
guy out in the field.
It's not
No.
helping you.
Not one
Right.
bit.
Not helping you.
So
But
it's like,
it comes down to heart for a lot of guys. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? You don't know you have the intestinal fortitude to be a cop until you know you have the intestinal fortitude to be a cop. You understand what I'm saying? Like I could put on a uniform all day and I could go out and do the job for 5 years and never be put in that situation to know that I need that intestinal fortitude until that situation happens. You know what I mean? Fortunately for me, hell, that was every day in Camden. You know what I mean? Things happen. That was real life working in Camden. But a lot of these cops out in the suburbs, you know, they could go a whole career with never really having to do a use of force on somebody.
Wow.
And then when you come
But
up to that situation, and you know, maybe you ain't ready for it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Maybe you're just not ready for it.
That's a good point, Chris.
well, I mean, okay, that's cool, but it's like to me, you know, it's a job, just like I have a job.
Yeah.
You know, I go to work. Sometimes I don't know if I'm gonna make it home. You know what I mean? I can touch that hot electrical wire and I'm dead. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just like, you know, statistically, if you really want to look at it, my job is more dangerous than a police officer.
No, absolutely. I ain't gonna doubt it. But let me ask you this. So you went to your electrician training. I'm assuming that's what you do based on what you said, Ward.
Yeah, went through apprenticeship.
And you didn't know you actually had that intestinal fortitude till the first time you had to touch that hot wire to something, right?
Yeah, that shit hurt.
You didn't know you didn't know you could do it until you did it, right?
Right.
So now
Well,
let's just say that you said, all right, now it's time for you to touch that hot wire, and you'd be like, man, I don't know if this job is for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the
I
same.
think
Like I can go.
well,
through
no,
all the
it
things in the world.
actually is it's different than with being police, and I would say, because it's not more or less, you know, you have that fortitude to go ahead and do it, but only time you may lose it is when you do get hit.
Yeah.
It's just a little
But
bit
I'm
different. It's
telling
more or
you-
less a
I think
reverse.
You don't
I
know
think,
you can handle every aspect of the job until you've handled every aspect of the job, and that's
I
just
mean,
a fact. You know what I mean?
you got a point there. Yeah,
I
definitely.
I also
understand
think
that.
though. I also think with policing though, I'm not certain that is one of the jobs that you have to wait to see because other lives are at hand. You know, Ward, when you talk about your job and others, it's your life at hand, but you are responsible for other lives. And I think having that that fortitude, waiting to see if you have it, you're responsible for others. And I think that particular job, because you guys are so, you know, you have the authority, you know, to do so much. That I'm not sure if that job, just like, you know, we say that's not a job where you can have one bad apple, you know.
Oh, that's true. I agree with that. I ain't going to argue that point.
Yeah. But I just think
they're
that,
there. You know what I mean? They're there.
Yeah.
So Officer Kelly, there's a lot. There's maybe 600 or 700 training hours that a recruit has to go through
You know,
in the academy.
it changes.
Maybe.
You know, when I went through in 1996, it was 16 weeks. Whatever that equates to,
Okay.
I don't know. I think it's up to 26 weeks now. I don't know how many hours that is.
Right. So about 4 months in the academy.
It's about 6 months now. It was 4 months
So
for me.
how
It's about
much-
6 months now.
How much field training?
You don't get any field training until you get your badge and your gun and you go out with a training partner. That's when you get your field training.
So
Everything
there's
else-
no.
In the
No
academy,
field
it's all book
training.
work. It's all book work, learning laws, learning, you know what I mean? Just
Mm.
going through mock scenarios, would I say, but you're not actually out there doing the job until you graduate the police academy.
Do you think field training could be a vital piece to help improve? Because, we all can agree that, the policing as a whole needs some type of improvement, especially, in hindsight of a lot of issues in Minnesota, with Tatiana Jefferson, who was in her home and was killed, Breonna Taylor, who was in her home and was killed sleeping. I mean, do you think at least some additional field training would be helpful so officers can get a sense of what they're dealing and not thrown into it when they receive their badge and gun?
Well, that's the thing. You're never going to just get thrown into it. You're not going to be coming out of the police academy, giving your badge and gun and putting a police car by yourself. You know what I mean? I know in my last job in Camden, in my last job in Camden and my job now with the state, we have another 3-month training program. So you graduate from the police academy, you get partnered up with a senior officer, they show you the ropes. You respond to the jobs, you watch how they're handled, and that's how you learn the job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there is a field training program out there, but unfortunately, and what I'm trying to explain is in some of these smaller, slower communities, you're not having the opportunity every day to experience a wide range of assignments. You know what I mean? So it's going to take in a suburban community, it might take years before you have your first death investigation. You know what I mean? It might take years before you have your first fatal traffic accident to do. You know what I mean? You're not getting the experience that an inner city officer does. I'm thankful that I was an inner city officer because I learned so much so fast. You know what I mean? But there's other officers out there that are not learning at the same pace. So when they're hit with a situation, they may not know what they're doing, you know what I mean? Depending, even if they got 7 or 8 years on, you know what I mean?
Right. This is good
and
stuff,
I'm not trying to
this
defend the
stuff.
officers because, you know what I mean? Common sense still comes into play. You got to have the right common sense. You got to be able to think critically on your feet. But like I said, in that particular video of Jacob Blake, there's more going on than what you see is what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got one follow-up real quick. Just in the city of Camden alone, $70 million goes towards policing. That's 70% of Camden City budget. 70%, $70 million goes towards policing, leaving only a small 30% to go to any other programs or activities that can help prevent crime. Because officers don't prevent crime. Officers only respond to crime.
Correct.
But now that it seems like Camden is at a point where they're saying that this policing program is working, do you feel like some of that $70 million can be used to help in some prevention? What I'm saying is that the conditions in the inner city are much different than the conditions in Cherry Hill, and all of these systemic issues like housing and like drug abuse, and job and training programs, activities in school, anger management some of these things can be redistributed. I know there's been a lot of talk about defunding the police or abolishing the police, but how about, since something seems to be working, could we get maybe $20 million?
Well, here you go, Jeff. So I got a couple of issues here, and my issue is definitely not with spending money on the inner city to better the inner city. My problem.
First, I know where you're going with this.
First of all, I'm gonna talk about pulling money out of the police department. If you wanted to pull money out of the police department, put it other places. What's going to be cut is going to be training. That's what's going to be cut.
Wow.
I mean, you're not going to cut officers because you need the officers. You're not going to cut the number of police cars because the number of police cars got to match the number of officers. You're not going to cut the number of guns because the number of guns have to match the number of police officers. Your cuts are going to come from training programs. There's going to be less training, which is going to create a bigger issue. But when we talk about the city of Camden, there's a whole nother issue with the city of Camden that gets on my nerves so bad, being a former resident of that city and caring about it the way I still do, is the fact that right now the politicians in that city are giving away that city. They got major corporation after major corporation after major corporation are paying absolutely nothing in taxes. Camden has to get state aid. 80% of their budget every year is covered by state aid. When they got all these corporations in the city right now that pay zero in taxes, That's my problem with the city right now. If them corporations were even paying 50% of what they were supposed to pay, Camden would have a budget surplus every year, and then the city on their own, without cutting anything, could fund all the services for the inner city.
And at least employ the people in the city to help pay taxes.
Right. You could start giving grants to build up the houses. You could start doing education programs and job training programs. You know what I mean? Like that falls on Camden itself. Don't put that on the police department. That's on the government of the city of Camden.
That's on the butt.
But to rebut that, Officer Kelly, that's something that's common all over America in urban neighborhoods.
But why?
There's a lot of corporate programs like Cooper Hospital and Rowan, and these medical programs that pop up in Camden. And you know, we could talk about the racial disparities in the medical field as well that are not paying tax. This happens all over in America.
So
you know,
Kev, let me say this:
there's no money poured. Wait a minute, let me finish.
No, okay.
Finish. There's no money poured into the communities because, number one, when there's not a lot of white people living in these areas, they don't see the value of putting money into the community. You know, and that's one of the things Camden is dealing with is gentrification. Okay, the forcing out of a lot of Black people and families, you know, tearing down project areas, affordable housing for Camden residents. All right, and you know, we see new housing being built up, but they're raising it so that it's not affordable to Camden. So gentrification is an issue too, because the value of the city depends upon the demographic that lives there.
But it doesn't have to be that way.
Across America.
Hey, Kev, let's give Chris a chance to answer that. I don't want to stray too far away. I said, let's give Chris a chance to answer that. I don't want to stray too far away from our initial topic. I can hear you perfect, bro.
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
But
yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Listen, so my thing is that why does it have to be like that? We lost Kev, and I wanted to respond to him, but why does it have to be like that? Why is it that the inner city can only get money if it gets gentrified? It doesn't make any sense to me. Camden has the resources right now where they could give as much money as they wanted to the inner city to build up the inner city and keep Black and minority residents in the city. You know what I mean? But they choose not to do it. It's the government of the city of Camden that's choosing not to do that. They're choosing to sign off on all these corporations paying nothing in taxes. And on the flip side of that, it was supposed to be 50% of the people hired were supposed to be Camden residents. But who's going to work at Holtec when they're building nuclear cores if you got no education? How are they hiring people from the city of Camden?
Here's the thing about Holtec. I mean, they may be building stuff for nuclear, but it's not actually nuclear.
Right, but you still got to have some kind of
nuclear until it actually hits the reactor.
I get it, but you got to have some kind of technical trade to build that.
Right.
You're not going in there with a high school education.
Right, but they wanted to train, but they brought them in and didn't train them. See, that's the problem.
And then the CEO went there and said the Camden people are lazy. He came straight out and said that. He said he hired Camden people. Camden people are lazy.
Wow.
But they only reacted to him because they treated them so bad that why would you want to work for somebody that treated you bad?
My point is, even up to this day, every one of them corporations have not maintained a 50% hiring of Camden residents.
Actually, the way they get around that, because just like the building that was built up downtown, I want to say this real quick and I'll leave it alone. They built out the new building downtown in front of the Victor building. I'm not going to say his name. You know, they built a new townhomes right across the street from there. Now, the prices for those townhomes were so high, nobody in Camden is going to can afford it anyway. You know, it's over $1,000 for an efficiency. Mm-hmm. Who's going to pay for that? So now these corporations, they end up buying or renting these townhomes, and then now that they have them, their employees can reside in them for whatever little time. Now they're considered residents, and they get around that.
Right.
So now if you got, you know, my CEO has a residence in Camden, but he ain't staying there. It's just like maybe he worked real late one night and he wants to lay his head down before he really goes home.
Right.
So now he's a resident.
But I'm saying don't take that out on the police department. Don't look to defund the police department.
No, we're not taking that.
You know, I mean, to get money to the inner city, don't look to defund the police department when there's a whole plethora of other issues happening in that city, particularly that city.
Well, actually, when we say defund the police,
Wardy,
fellas,
pass the ball.
I got a question. I want to go back to earlier. Chris mentioned, and Chris, again, thanks, man, for coming on and sharing.
Thank
your
you, brother.
with us,
No
man.
problem. I told you I'm here.
We appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Come on.
One of the things that, if you can expound on a little more, you had mentioned common sense. You know, you mentioned common sense. When I saw Jacob Blake walk around that car, the gun drawn, I thought about emotional intelligence, and I thought about common sense. You know, and sometimes I feel like, you know, that would come first. I'm not an officer, so I don't know. In terms of what would be the most the smartest way to handle this, you know, this situation. And when does emotional intelligence, emotional awareness, when does common sense come in play in situations concerning Jacob Blake, when all he had was a knife, which was in his car?
Well, no, actually, the knife is in his hand, Keith. You gotta start looking at the video when they slow the video down frame by frame. He had the knife in his hand when he was walking around the car.
Okay.
But
I did
either
see
way,
something in his hand, but I didn't know it was a knife. I got
but
you.
either way, it's like something happened on the other side of that car that none of us have seen, unless somebody's got another video that shows another angle, you know, because it immediately caught my attention when he walked around the car. The cops already had their guns out. You know what I mean? Right. Like that should not have been an option based on the circumstances if they hadn't already seen something or they hadn't already encountered something that we couldn't see on video, you know. But the common sense part comes in is how do they let him walk around to even try to get into the driver's side of the car? Like, your common sense should have kicked in and it should have ended before then.
Right. Real quick, Chris, I got a quick question. Chris, with the proper training, what do you think the best way? I know you said some of the officers are getting soft. What do you think would have been the best way to handle that situation?
I would have handled it. He wasn't paying attention to the officers behind him. So knife in hand or not knife in hand, I'd have just ran up on him, ripped him up, controlled the arms, took him to the ground. You know, I mean, there's 3 officers on the scene. At that point, you know, the other 2 guys help out, get him cuffed up and get him gone. You know what I mean? But with that being said, I want to touch on something else because I know I'm hoping I'm not following on Facebook Live right now, but I'm hoping we got a lot of listeners, and I want to. I'm probably going to say something controversial right now that might mess with a lot of you guys. But if you look back at all the recent encounters that have went bad with police, when you go to Rayshard Brooks, when you go to George Floyd, when you can go back to however many you want. There's a level of disrespect shown for the police by almost all of those individuals. There's some level of resisting arrest. Even in the George Floyd case, after they had him handcuffed initially, they tried to sit him in the police car and he passively refused to go in the police car, which is where he ended up back on the ground. I'm just going to say to your listeners, you know, like, there's no need to resist arrest. In the law in New Jersey, you have no right to resist arrest, even if the arrest is bad. That's a fact in the state of New Jersey. You cannot resist arrest, even if the arrest itself is unlawful. All right. So
how is that possible?
You could be found guilty. You could be found guilty of resisting arrest in court, even if the initial
and that's
arrest
the only charge.
No. Let's just say, all right, so you're involved in something, and we're going to lock you up, but you're not the person who did it. All right. We made a mistake. We're locking you up on, let's say, shooting somebody, but you're not the person that did it. All right. Okay. But you resist arrest with us. Now you go to court, you're found not guilty on that. You can still be found guilty on resisting arrest. The point I'm trying to make is, folks, stop resisting arrest. You know what I mean? Stop putting police in a position where they have to make a decision to use force against you. You know what I mean? Have your day in court and keep it moving. You know what I mean? Your life is more important than fighting with a cop. Believe me.
Right. So can I jump there with a question, Keith? Is that all right?
No. Yeah, you can. Give me a second. I think that's something that needs to be looked into in terms of because my thought initially is Why is someone being arrested, wrongfully being arrested? You know, and I put that responsibility back on the police officer. You're putting the individual in a position to have a day in court and he has nothing to do with whatever the situation is with the officer, but the officer chooses to arrest the wrong person. Now,
maybe you can't assume that the officer ever knows that they're arresting the wrong person. Like in the George Floyd,
right.
Cops are getting called to the scene for a reason. Like even when you say George Floyd, the store owner said that he's passing a false $20 bill. You know what I mean? A police officer's got to do his job. If he's called to a scene, you know, Rashard Brooks was sleeping behind the wheel of a car. Police get called to the scene. They have to take an action. They have to do something. They just can't ignore it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the point I'm saying is if the cop makes his decision that you're going to be under arrest, don't resist. You know what I mean?
Right.
Resisting is let's just say that every incident was non-justified. Every end result was bad. The cop using force was bad. Let's just for the sake of argument, every situation was bad. It could have all been avoided if they just didn't resist arrest. You know what I mean?
Right. So Officer Kelly, to the point of you brought up being respectful when approached by officers, and many times that goes on officers as well, in their handling of us.
Absolutely.
And seeing us as suspects and questioning us. One of the things that puts us at a disadvantage is a lot of the Black community don't know their rights when it comes to officers stopping them, interrogating them. And when we do ask officers, you know, what am I being stopped for? You know, what is your badge number? Officers, a lot of times when we do know our rights or we do have questions, we're met with some irritation and agitation from officers. So one of the things that that I'm looking at is that there has to be respect on both sides. I'm going to have to look at the George Floyd body cam again, because even though he might have
Kevin, I don't know if
reluctant.
Kevin, I don't know if you need to look at that again. He was on his neck for 8 minutes and 56 seconds. I don't know.
The point I'm trying to say.
That's unjustified. Right. I'm talking about him getting back onto the ground. He could have just sat in the police car and he'd have been on his way. That's what I'm talking about.
To prison.
He refused to get in the police car.
Yeah, but it looked like he was
the end
in the
result
police
was unjustified. Car. You know what I mean? The end result was unjustified.
You're right. The end result was unjustified, but it also looked like he was in the police car. He was brought out of the police car.
No, he never got in. He never got in. Look at the body camera. He never got in. He never got in.
I'll look at it again, but I'm looking at the whole respect factor on how officers engage the Black community at times, and we're at a disadvantage. We're at a disadvantage many times because we don't know our rights when it comes to policing and officers engaging us. And when we do question officers about our arrest or about our detainment, many officers become very agitated.
You're right.
At the fact of us asking for a supervisor to come on scene.
You're right.
It will irritate and agitate, and that's all part of the officer's job, is to give some disclosure
You're right.
to whoever the suspect is, and a lot of times that's not done in a respectful manner to the Black community.
But I can't speak on every other officer. I told you right at the beginning, it's respect on both ways. I've always been respectful to everybody. It just wasn't brought up that way to be disrespectful. You know what I mean? And the person that I might lock up today, you could be the person that helps me tomorrow because I wasn't disrespectful to you. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to ever burn any bridges, with anybody I deal with in life. You know what I mean? I'm a respectful person. You know what I me? But every officer's not like that. Every officer's not like that. Every Black person's not like that. You know what I mean?
Every white person
that's what I'm saying. Everybody's
not like that.
Everybody's not like that. You know what I mean? And so I can't speak on everybody. But you're right, 100%. It needs to be respect, 100%.
My last question, maybe. Is there a culture? Is there a culture in law enforcement where another officer may try to intervene another officer from misconduct, or to speak out about other officers and their issues of racial bias, of profiling, of police brutality towards us? Is there a culture within the police department, like on the streets, there's no snitching, right? Is there a culture in the police department where another person is ostracized, another officer is ostracized if they intervene or if they report another officer of their just outlandish misconduct towards suspects? Is there a culture?
As a police officer in my career, have never encountered that culture of a problem. Does it exist? I believe it absolutely exists. You know, I mean, we've seen it in other cities. We've seen it in other police departments where people have come out to either stop somebody from taking an action or to report that somebody took an action, and you see they have been ostracized with their police department.
Yeah, they want to keep their job.
I have personally never experienced it. I've never had a situation where either I was using excessive force or somebody had to stop me, or I had to stop somebody else that was using excessive force, where I would be worried about how I would be thought at by my peers. So, but does it exist? Yeah, it exists. It exists.
Yeah. And I bring that up because of the George Floyd incident. There were 3 other officers.
Right. A lot of, I feel.
Some say that they were new or whatever.
So that's what I was going to say. We were talking about the field training program, you know what I mean? And 2 of them officers were fresh out of the academy, and the other 2 were their training officers, you know what I mean? And as a fresh out of the academy officer, I don't know if I'd have had the balls, I don't know what other word to say, to tell my training officer that what you're doing is wrong. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I feel bad for them kids. I do. The 2 that were fresh out the academy, I feel bad for them. The idiot that leaned on his neck for 9 minutes should be in jail, under the jail for the rest of his life. You know what I mean? I mean, he was wrong. We're all taught positional asphyxia. You know, that's huge. And just laying somebody handcuffed in their back on the ground, just laying them there without putting any pressure on them, they can die. You know what I mean? Right. But now you're going to put pressure on a body part for 8, 9 minutes, however long it was. I mean, you're asking for trouble. You know what I mean? He should have known better than that, and he should pay the price.
Yeah. The one thing that stands out for me is, those 2 training officers. They're training these two. I don't know what cadets. I don't know what you call them. New recruits.
They're officers. They're just new officers. That's all.
To actually, they're their mentors, and they're watching. So we don't know what happens years later. The same possible thing can watch. And I had a conversation, I think, with KD before of, how many times have this happened before they actually were video taped? So this is definitely something, man, that needs to be, taken on another level, man. Yeah. So Chris, man.
Hey Keith, real quick before you cut me off, man, let me back up a little bit, because going back to the systematic way of which you believe that Black people are being treated by police. Just for all you fellas, real quick, how many people in America do you think are killed by police each year? Just give me a number. Maybe maybe you don't. Just a rough number on average. How many people in America do you think are killed by police?
Maybe about 12. Maybe about 1,000.
Keith?
I may go about 1,300.
Ward?
I have no clue, brother.
Eric B?
Yeah, I'm just throwing a number out there.
I'm throwing out a number, 1,100.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, you fellas are all right in the ballpark. You're right there. On average, there's about 1,200 people a year killed by police. Okay. Mm-hmm. How many of them do you think are Black?
I can't say, because there was one the other day in Lafayette, Louisiana, that hasn't really been talked about. So how many others that haven't been talked about?
Right.
So I really
statistics are out there. Listen, a murder, a death has to be added into statistics.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't. I'm gonna tell you right now, statistics. You can take that shit, wipe your ass with it, because
Ward, you can't hide a body.
Be respectful, Ward.
You can't hide a body.
Yes, Ward. You can. I mean, you might not hide the body, but you can hide how
some
it
things
was,
are not
became a body.
All right.
Some things are just not reported.
Maybe not how things became a body, but I'm talking about.
Tell us where you're going with this, Chris.
I'm going with this is that, all right, there's 800,000 police officers in this country, give or take a couple, 800,000. There's 45 million black people in this country, give or take a few. All right. That means that there's one police officer for every 55 black Americans, give or take a few. Okay. I'm going to tell you right now that if police officers were systematically going out to kill black people, the black race would be eliminated right now. I'm telling you that.
Here's some statistics.
Let me throw this back on you. Out of them
I got
1,200
some
shootings,
statistics
on them
for you.
1,200 shootings, 300 and 350 are black. Or not shootings, killings. 300 to 350 are black. Okay? That means out of 800,000 cops that are working the street, 300 and 350 black people are being killed. I don't see where that's systematically going out to kill black people. And then you got to look at most of them are going to be justified shootings, and that's why you don't hear about them on the news.
Here's the disproportionality, though, in the killing of black men versus white men. You have out of 1,000 civilians, average, that are killed by police officers per year. Black men are 2.5 times more likely to be killed by police in their lifetime.
But let me ask you, why is that?
Let me finish. Black people who were fatally shot by police are twice as likely to be fatally shot by police than whites are.
Not going to argue that statistic.
And these are the statistics for whatever.
But I'm
reason.
going to ask you why. Why?
Okay, but
Why?
For us to be Chris, for black men to be in their lifetime to be killed twice, and we don't even make up the majority of people in America.
The population.
But I'm asking you why. Think about why. I'm open
What's
your
your
mind
question?
to think about why.
Why what?
There's many issues.
Why are black people disproportionately targeted by police officers?
Because
ask yourself why.
Here's the reason: because of systemic conditions in the community that need to be addressed. If these things are addressed as a holistic approach, all right, you will see fewer deaths to black men, and that goes with the police and their training and their engagement of us, as well as the relationship with the community in which they serve.
I also think it goes with it.
One of the issues is that in the community, there's a high murder rate in Philadelphia. It's crazy right now.
This is where I'm getting at with you, Kev.
I feel for
where's the crime happening
for
at?
Commissioner. I feel for Commissioner Outlaw. Okay, but the problem I have is that the guns that are circulating in the black community aren't given and put in the hands of black people by black people. There has to be a way to target the district. See, that's why we need more money and more legislation to do more things to help our community, because guns are funneled into our community and the police have a hard time. They can't track who's funneling these guns into our community, and that's one aspect of it. But there's so many conditions in our black community that make us prone to being killed twice. Two times more likely.
You've actually just answered your own question, because where the crime is happening.
I was asking one though. I was just
where the crime is happening. I mean, you said that you're 2 times more likely to be targeted, but the crime is happening in the inner cities, where the inner cities are populated by minorities. You know what I mean?
Now,
I live in the suburbs.
Let's not go into populated by minorities. It's just more densely populated. When you start putting more people together, that's when things starting to happen. So basically, if I have more room, if I have more room to spread my wings, that's less things that's going to happen.
But once again, we're going back to where that's not a police issue. That's a politician issue, what you're talking about, Ward. What I'm saying is that, let's be real. We're all from Camden. We're all born and raised there. What's Camden's population? And then what is the white makeup of Camden? How many white people are living in Camden? Yeah, I don't know an exact number, but I'm going to throw out.
Listen, I got a lot of white. Listen, you go down Broadway, you're going to see all white opioid.
Yeah, but they ain't living in the city, Kevin.
They are living there. They're not going home.
But they ain't being reported as living there.
Right.
Well, listen, I'm going to say, so let's just say 5%, Ward, for the sake of argument. There's still 5% white people left in the city. That means it's 95% minority occupied. Okay. So as a police officer working in an extremely violent city like Camden, who are they more likely to encounter? You know, you just got to be real with that. You know what I mean? Don't hide from that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but see, but the problem is like with the systematic racism that exists, is they pack us there and they keep us there as far as
who is they? Who's they? That's not the police packing you there.
No. I'm not saying the police are doing that.
That's a political issue.
It's just the powers that be.
Right.
Started this. That's why they called them the projects, because they wanted to keep us all packed in and like rats.
And
then it goes to the gentrification and all that other, you know, it's all wrapped into one.
It has to be something that officers can understand the community that they're serving. A poor community, which leads to crime. A drug-infested community, substandard housing, which leads to crime. You got to understand and be sensitive to the issues that the Black community is facing. Not all of us are bad.
I'm going to tell you right now.
And the way that officers really have to, and that's why racial bias training is so critical to officers. These fresh white faces of officers who are inexperienced, don't know the community.
I ain't never seen that boy.
They need to know the demographic of the community that they're facing, which is a poor, substandard community that's facing a myriad of issues that leads to crime. All right, that's something that police can't handle on their own, and that's why there needs to be collaboration.
Right.
By police officers.
You got to understand that if a police officer gets called to do a job, they got to do their job, Kev. So that's why when you say Black males in particular are being targeted more often than white males or any other race or any other gender for that matter, it's because that is the demographic of where it's happening. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, it's the reality of the situation. You know what I mean?
Right. But every call that comes for a Black person, a Black man, does not have to be handled the same.
And it's not.
The same way. Every case has to be handled.
When was the last time somebody was killed in the city of Camden by a police officer?
Well, it's something that's unreported, though.
If you're killed by a police officer, it's going to be reported.
I can't. Okay.
All right. You know what?
Okay.
We kind of discussed this probably a couple of days ago, and came up as far as this community policing thing. And I always had the question, like, what is your, take? What is your meaning of community policing? And basically mine is, and it used to be that way, but it was only for a short amount of time. Like, I have a solution for a lot of this. Basically, if you don't live in a community, you don't police the community.
That's fair.
You know what I mean? Just like back, where did Barney Fife live? Where did Andy Griffith? They lived in Mulberry. They didn't live in another town. No, they policed the town that they lived in. You get a feel for the community, and you know what's going on. And unless things are going to happen, because Joe Blow down the street, like, oh man, the police chief lives right there, I'm going to be more respectful.
Right.
But that already happens in cities like Philadelphia and New York. You're already required to live within city limits to be a police there.
At all times?
At all times. You have to live in Philadelphia. But what happens is that, they make a police neighborhood. You know what I mean? Everybody's living in Northeast Philly who's a cop right now, you know what I mean? But so is it going to solve maybe in a city like Camden that's small, it might change some things. Maybe in a city like Trenton, it's small, but when you're talking about these bigger cities, I don't think that's going to merely make a difference.
It would be hard to be in New York. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hey, Chris, real quick, Chris, you said something that was really interesting. You said that if there is some form of budget cuts, they're going to cut the training, which is something that we really, really need.
Indeed.
Is there a way that we could somehow get around that?
I don't know how to get around that, Evie. You know what I mean? Because like I said, in a city that I don't know. I mean, maybe you can get away with it in a suburban town that doesn't have a lot of crime. You could cut cops, which could cut salary, and the salary could turn around and be passed back into the communities. Right. But in the inner city environment, you know what I mean? You've seen in 2012 when they laid off half the Camden police force, you've seen what happened to Camden. Camden had its worst crime year ever. You know what I mean? 68 people lost their lives. It was ridiculous. It was a war zone in Camden in 2012.
All right. I got a question about that.
Let me finish up real quick. So you really can't cut the funding from a police department on staff. You can't cut it on equipment. You can't cut on whatever facilities. So where's the money going to come from if you want to cut it? The only thing you can really cut are training and hours that you send cops to training, you know what I mean? And personnel to train them. I don't see where else it could come from. I wish I could, but I don't see where else it could come from. Maybe somebody else has got a better idea.
Well, let me ask you this about the money.
Weapons
go ahead, Ward.
That may not be needed, but go ahead, Ward.
Go ahead, Ward.
So as far as the money goes, you have a cop has an accident with the car for some odd reason, and especially I've seen a lot of cops out of Camden City just hanging out at Wawa's way out of, not even in Camden. Say they had an accident. Who is responsible for the repairs to that vehicle?
The insurance company. I mean, ultimately, it's going to become on the insurance company. But in my day, I don't know how Camden is now, and I don't know how any other police force is, but in my day, if I had a traffic accident that was my fault, I was either fined or suspended for that.
Okay.
Really?
You know what I mean? So
there is some recourse back on the
recourse,
officer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I lost days for traffic accidents before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wow.
But it happens.
I mean, and just a little bit more on the money. It's like, do we really need a police force to be like a military than just a regular police force?
I don't know. I mean, what do you consider military?
Because I'm like,
I mean, you see
a lot of this military type equipment is a lot more expensive, and I know,
and that's normally
especially
relegated.
They charge a lot more money for it. Like, do we really need that to police a community? It's not like we're going across seas to fight somebody.
No.
With
valid point, Ward, but most of that equipment is relegated to SWAT teams, and I don't know. Could they get rid of that? They probably could. I don't know, but how much would that save over the long time? That would be a one-time spending. You know what I mean? A one-time saving. How would that go on for year and year and year and year?
Well, here's the thing.
Programs?
It would go on for years and years and years because they're constantly updating, getting new guns and getting new rifles, and always replacing because. And
a lot of that military surplus is given to police departments from the government. They're not paying for a lot of that stuff. So a lot of the old tanks that you see that ride around or military type vehicles, they're government hand-me-downs, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
So they're not. A lot of times they're not even spending money on that equipment.
Okay.
We good, fellas?
Yeah.
Anything else, man? Hey, Chris, man. Definitely a pleasure, man, having you on, man, enlightening us on the perspective of policing. It's good to be able to disagree on certain topics, being able to work through them and get different perspectives. A lot of things came out of this, man. So I thank you again, man, for being brave enough, man, to having the courage to come on and, talk about such a sensitive topic like this.
Hey,
So
I want to thank you guys for not beating me up too bad.
Man, come on, Chris.
Yeah. But anything you want to leave us with, Chris? Anything you want to leave us with?
I mean, it's just be respectful, expect respect in return, and like I said, if anything I could say to your listeners that are following you right now, your life is more important than resisting a police officer. You know what I mean? Have your day in court and keep living. You know what I mean? For real.
Okay.
And that's what I would leave you with. You know what I mean?
Okay. Thanks, man.
All right.
Thanks a lot, man, for joining.
All right, no problem, fellas. I'll talk to you.
All
right.
But you know what? I'm in a way I should have said it before he left. But a lot of times that day in court still don't go right with us anyway.
It still don't go the way that you. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Go to court, man.
And damn, exactly. I don't want to go to court either. But it's like
the public defender is against me, the prosecutor is against me, the judge is against me, the court clerk is against me. I can dress in my Sunday best.
Even the parking lot attendant don't like me.
Hey, we had some good comments over there too, man.
Yeah.
Had a few people making some comments, man.
One of the things I meant to ask him, there's some real good comments, man. One of the things I meant to ask him though was about the 17-year-old Rittenhouse.
Yeah, we never got into that.
This boy walked past officers walk past what's it called? They've been deployed. The National Guard. He walked by the National Guard with the AK-47, the AR-15.
Yeah, the AR-15.
Yeah, it wasn't like it was just
protesters
slung
had
across his
said
back.
that he had shot into the crowd.
And he walked right by him.
And he walked right by him. I mean,
and even gave him a hand signal. Gave him a hand signal.
Right. The blatant disparity. You know, if that was a black kid with an assault weapon, how do you think he would have been met?
Yeah, that would have ended different. That would have ended different for sure. Yeah, that would have ended different. Yeah, and he wouldn't be incarcerated right now. He'd probably be dead.
Yeah, they gave him water, checked on him, see if he was okay. You know, so it's just, you know, it's blatant disparity now that we see.
Because it's like this ain't like it just started happening. It's been happening forever. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, I always get clowned for watching my old shows. But you know, just like it was one episode of Sanford and Son where guy was coming in collecting money for, you know, for the Heart Association. And then he walked in and he told Fred, he was like, you know, more black men are killed by heart disease than anything in America. He was like, really? I didn't know that. I thought it was the police. You know what I mean? It's like it was joked about, but it was a real thing back in the 70s. And even before the 70s, it was always that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even back during Jim Crow, when they were like snatching guys out of their homes just because, you know, they did something they didn't like. And they're getting killed, and they're getting killed in front of their children. You know?
It was 90 years of Jim Crow.
So I mean,
you know,
they can, like I said, they can take all these statistics. I don't trust statistics. I really don't. You can claim, spout as many statistics as you want, but you know, my eyes don't lie.
But the other problem I have also is the use of deadly force.
Yeah,
you know, police are it's hard to convict an officer who has shot and killed a black. It's hard to put them in jail because of the fact that you have to prove that it's on the onus of the plaintiff to prove that that officer violated your constitutional rights, but they stand on the fact that the officer was doing their job. All right.
Exactly.
So the onus is on you to prove that they violated your constitutional right, you know, but you know, they have the backing of the Supreme Court by saying that the use of deadly force is allowed if an officer believes that their life is in danger, you know.
Now,
and that's
what's funny?
It's so broad.
Right.
So
you know what's funny?
They can use it for, you know, that it's in itself they can use to justify any time that they discharge their weapon.
Right. Now, I was speaking to a former cop. He works on the job now. And he was a former Camden cop. And he was telling me little bits and pieces like, you know, quotas do exist. You know, like if you're like the supervisor would be like, you walked around all day and you ain't stopped nobody. You know, things like that.
Right.
Dead men don't tell tales. You know what I mean? If you know, he can't testify against you if he's dead.
Yeah.
You know, other things like that. It's like it's crazy because they're all in fear of their job, and these supervisors more or less, if you're not making a stop, if you didn't kill that suspect that you shot at, we got problems.
Right. So they're looking for quotas at the same time.
Quotas exist. They talk about no, it don't exist. You know, and I really didn't want to say it to Chris, but you know, it's not just Chris. It's anybody in a lot of professions that hold a title, to where they don't want to bring down the institution, so they kind of dance around certain things and not just lay it on the line, but like, look, this is how it is.
That quote,
you know what I mean? Because I see that a lot. I see that a lot, just even in construction, about them saying things. So something like that, where it really can open a can of worms.
You just
Certain
had a
things
quote up
they
there.
just don't want to say.
You just had a quote up there from Rob Tufnell about
what was
officers not knowing
Rob
the law.
Rob said the problem is a lot of police do not know the law. Police have a "I'm right and you better do what I say" type of mentality.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the thing I was getting at, is that they take advantage of us when we do know what our rights are. You know, when it's okay for us to pose questions about why we are being detained, why are we being arrested? You know, can I get a supervisor on the scene? Things
where's
like
your
that.
Where's your law degree at?
Right. When so, you know, and that can agitate and irritate an officer, you know, and we've seen that on several occasions. That can agitate and irritate an officer to really become to go overboard in their handling with us.
Right.
You know. Right. It was something, man, so much I left out, even with discipline with officers.
Yeah.
That's the
officers, they are moved around from department to precinct and whatever. Like with Tamir Rice in 2014, he was shot because he had the toy gun, right? And the thing is that the department that he came from had deemed him unfit for service and fired him.
Right.
How in the world do you get rehired in another police department? Right? Yeah. Because they don't track. States don't track an officer's discipline. That officer Chauvin, who had his knee on George Floyd's neck, he had 18 complaints against him. Prior to that. Yeah. And if you don't hold officers accountable for what they have done previously in one department or moving from another department, you don't track on their work history from another department or don't take that into consideration, then it's something wrong with the system. Yeah. And usually those bad cops, you know where they end up at? They end up in the hood.
Yeah. So this is another fellas, man. I appreciate y'all again. Thanks, Chris. Chris Kelly for coming on and enlightening us and giving us his perspective. Gentlemen, I appreciate you guys. Thanks everyone for coming out, watching, and being a part of our podcast. What's up?
Yeah.
Share. You
know, we need y'all. We need y'all to like this thing and share it. When you like it and you hit that like, you send the algorithm in the Facebook space to tell everybody we're relevant. All right.
Yes,
you know,
and on YouTube.
We just pop up. We just comments,
man. I'm loving the comments Facebook over
page.
There, man.
We just pop up on your Facebook page because you liked us.
This guy crazy. Yeah, so go to our YouTube page just for just our thoughts. Like, subscribe to our YouTube page. We're on Facebook. We just got a Facebook page. Just our thoughts. So if you can go like that, we'll be back on September 7th with just our thoughts with the fellas, touching on some current topics and what's going on and enjoying a good time. So thanks again for coming out. Again, like, share. Thanks for joining us and just really investing this last hour, 38 minutes. So we appreciate you guys. Thanks for coming out again. And these are just our thoughts.